Hello, and welcome back to London Cycle Routes. Today, I'll be showing you how to cycle from Forest Gate in East London to London Bridge in Central London. This ride takes about 35 to 40 minutes, and you can do the whole thing on quiet streets and protected cycle lanes. Making the same journey by public transport takes roughly the same amount of time, so despite being a roughly 7-mile commute, cycling is actually a great option. If you find this video useful, or you just enjoy watching it, then please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, as I try to post new ones just like it every week. Alright, let's get going. So we're starting on Wood Grange Road, just near Forest Gate Station, and we're going to immediately turn down here, down Earlham Grove. We're heading straight into a low traffic neighbourhood here, so this is an area of streets that have had some entrances closed to motor vehicles. It's a joint project between Newham Council and Waltham Forest. Waltham Forest has got lots of low traffic neighbourhoods. Newham doesn't actually have too many and hasn't done that much for cycling, so it's good to see them do one here. Good influence by neighbouring Waltham Forest, I think, certainly helping out. And as you can see, the closure here, which has sort of prevented through traffic from being on these streets through motor traffic, it's made this a really nice ride. It's really quiet. And for the first stretch of this journey, we're actually going to be going down these back streets here. These measures were originally put in as a trial during the COVID-19 pandemic, followed by a consultation, and after that the two councils have actually announced that they're going to be made permanent, so when you come down here it should be like this, but there's no chance of them being taken out. And I think that's really good news, because it makes it really easy to ride into Forest Gate, which doesn't really have much other cycle infrastructure, but you don't really need cycle lanes when the roads are this quiet, and really, yeah, anyone sort of aged 8 to 80 would be able to cycle on these streets. We will be joining protected cycle lanes later on, but this is a really nice extension for us to get a little bit further out into the sort of suburbs of East London. These road signs we're going through here, they say no motor vehicles entry, and that's one of the ways that these roads are kept quiet. So previously motorists who really should be on the main road would have been using these back streets as a cut through, but they can't do that anymore because they basically aren't allowed to go through those signs. As a result, it's an environment which is really pleasant to cycle in. In a second we're going to connect up with Cycleway 2, and I think it would actually be interesting to make this an official extension of Cycleway 2. You know, you could put a signposted route through the back streets, and you could do things like, for instance, this road crossing here, you do have to wait. You know, it can be a little bit busy, so it'd be maybe nice to have a cycle zebra crossing or a signalled crossing across there to make it more easier for crossing the main roads. And that could be nice to bring an official cycleway into Forest Gate. Now, just watch out for this road on the left, because you could actually turn down there, and I think there might be a better way than the route that I've gone. I'm going straight on here, and you can see this road sort of closed off to motor traffic. And I'm going to turn left at the end of the street. And there's a very short section in this video where I'm going on sort of a main road here. You immediately go into a bus lane, so it's not really a problem. If you wanted to, by the way, you'd be able to cycle on the pavement here, because there is a shared space sign. So if that's a problem for you, you can do it. But actually, if you turn down that road on the left that I pointed out, you could actually go through a little path down the side of the Morrison's car park and come out here. So it might be worth going that way. I probably would go that way if I filmed this video again. But you can see now we've joined a really nice protected cycle track, sort of heading towards Stratford Town Centre, and this is the sort of eastern end of Cycle Superhighway 2, as it used to be called, or as it's now called, Cycleway 2, because all the cycle superhighways have been rebranded as Cycleway. By the way, this crossing here, make sure you push the button if you want it to be triggered to let you across. I'm always a bit confused about cycle crossings, because some of them have these sort of visual detectors to see if a cyclist is waiting before they allow you to before they give you a green light to cross. But if there's a button there, it is worth just pushing the button, because that will sometimes the detectors miss the cyclist. So yeah, always push a button if one's available. And actually, if anybody is watching this who installs cycle crossings, I definitely recommend putting, even if you've got a nice detector on there, I definitely recommend putting a button override on there, because the detectors don't always work, and you know, sometimes they could be aligned wrong, or sometimes people will stop in a slightly different place, and you just end up waiting there for, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes before you realise that it's not detected you. And that just encourages people to jump red lights, really, so we don't want that. So yeah, it's always good to have a button override on a cycle crossing. If you were paying attention there, you might have noticed that we just passed Stratford High Street DLR station, and that's going to be a running theme on this ride. We go past a lot of stations, a few DLR stations, but then also we end up basically following the route of the District line, and it really gives you a sense, if you're used to getting the District line into town, getting the DLR into town from here, really gives you an idea of sort of the distance that we're covering here above ground, because often you lose track of how far you're going when you're on the tube, because obviously you can't really see where you are. But yeah, we are actually going to be going quite fast. That Stratford High Street station is quite interesting because it opened as a DLR station in 2011 in time for the Olympics for the sort of DLR extension. But the station itself actually is a lot older. It's sort of a red brick building, and it actually opened in 1847 originally as Stratford Bridge Station, and then became Stratford Market Station, and it was on the sort of line out into East Anglia. But then it closed and it was reopened. But they managed to reuse the old station building, which I think is quite nice. But back to the cycling, you'll see that we've basically had curb protection on this cycle lane the whole way. It's really quite good. There's bits further down that aren't as good, but I'll explain those when we get to them. But for now, yeah, we've basically got these great protecting curbs, and you'll be pleased to know that in the other direction, on the other side of the road, there's also a protected lane going eastbound. So yeah, you can really be comfortable about this. There is one sort of trickier bit coming up here, and that's the Bow Roundabout. It's easy if you know what to do, but the layout is a little bit counterintuitive. So this actually used to be a casualty hotspot, and they've redone it with sort of protected lanes and special cycle traffic lights. So it's good now, but let me show you how to do it. So you'll see that there is, coming up here on the right, it's a red for cars but green for cycles, and that puts us into this little waiting box here. That gives us a head start over the other traffic, which we then go onto the protected lane, and make sure you use the protected lane, and also obey that traffic light there that's on the protected lane, because otherwise you'll be cycling across turning traffic, which you don't want. So yeah, really that's actually quite simple, but some people miss the fact that there are two sets of traffic lights, and that they're separate lights for cars and separate lights for cycles. As you can see, it's put us back onto a really nice protected lane now. And if you're unfamiliar with them, the lane has also got what they call bus stop bypasses, so there's plenty of bus stops along this route, and the lane tends to go behind the bus stops. That's so we don't have to overtake buses when they're stopped at the stop, and that's really pleasant. But it's good for us because it means that we don't, interact with buses. There's one coming up here, but what it also means is that if somebody's trying to access the stop using this little zebra crossing here, you should wait for them to cross because they've got priority getting onto the bus stop island. We're passing another DLR station here, by the way, Bow Church DLR. That gives you a good idea of how far we've come in that short time, according to the tube map, because it would normally be a sort of reasonable bus journey or a sort of a few stops on the DLR to get there. So yeah, we're going pretty quick above ground. But I think it's really impressive that the quality of this cycle lane, considering how long it is. So you can see that the designers have used slightly different types of protection in different bits. So on our right here, you can see this is what we call curb segregation. So it's just a sort of thick curb between us and the traffic, and that's probably the best, but it does take up quite a lot of space. So you have second best here, which is a stepped track. So there is still a curb there, but it's a step down from the curb to from the cycle track to the main roadway. And that we're now back on the regular curbs, and you use a step track when you need to save a bit of space, so maybe when the road's a little bit narrower or something like that. And those two are excellent, really good sorts of segregation. There is also a third type of segregation which is used on here. We're back on step tracks again, by the way, and then back on the curbs. The third type we also use, you see a lot in London increasingly, is called wand segregation, or wand protection. And that's where you have these sort of plastic wands that basically divide you from the traffic, and some people like them. They're sort of higher up. You get a sort of, but they're probably less actual physical protection from the traffic, and more they're just to give you a sort of a sense of being separated from it. It's sort of a psychological thing. And we've got some wands coming up here on the right to illustrate that nicely. So this is wand segregation or wand protection. And that's considered the lighter form of segregation. Personally, I think wands are a little bit unsightly, and I do prefer step tracks or the curbs where possible. But apparently they're very cheap to do, which is why they're popping up everywhere, and they're quite quick to install as well. So yeah, that's why you see them everywhere, because budgets are tight, and also space is often very tight, and these will go anywhere and don't cost very much. Hopefully in time they'll be able to be replaced with something a little bit more sightly, a little bit more high quality, like the nice curb segregation that we're back on again here. Now we're coming up to what's probably the worst bit of Cycleway 2, and it really needs improving, and or you could say finishing, because it's really unfinished. So we're now dumped into a bus lane. You can see that there's relatively heavy traffic on the road, and the bus lane remains relatively calm, relatively placid. There's not really any traffic in it. It's not ideal though. Really, the segregated lane should be continued throughout the whole thing. So yeah, let's finish Cycleway 2, and I know that Tower Hamlets Council had a petition handed to them in the meantime. This is quite annoying. So another thing you could do to maybe improve this cycleway is to possibly ban this turn, because clearly cars can't cope with it. I mean, they're just sort of getting on top of each other, and that held us up for a good while. Remember, this video is sped up twice, so I was waiting for twice as long as we actually waited in the video there. By the way, in that time that I was rambling about curbs and wands and step tracks, we actually went past 3 district line stops. So we went past first Bow Road, then we went past Mile End, and then most recently we also went past Stepney Green station. So yeah, that really shows how quickly we are, how quickly you can make progress above ground here when you've got a clear run on a cycleway like this. One thing I would like to point out, although this route is largely symmetric, there are differences when you're going in the opposite direction. So while we have some quite nice step sort of segregation here, and you can see there is a segregated lane on the other side of the road there. It's wand protection at the moment, and there's a little bit of step track. Actually, when we come up here, when we go past Whitechapel Market, the segregation, although it stays fine for us, it actually disappears on the other side of the road. So this is the other bit which is incomplete. You can't really see it because the bus is in the way, but if you look closely now, yeah, you'll see people are having to cycle on the carriageway of the road. It's only a very short bit, and it really does need to be fixed. But generally, it's not ideal. You can see there someone was having to cycle on the carriageway. Hopefully that will be fixed. I know that a petition was presented to Tower Hamlets Council a couple of weeks ago from when I made this video to ask them to do it, and I think it got a pretty favourable response. So if you live in Tower Hamlets, do write to your councillors and ask them to finish Cycleway 2. In this direction it's pretty good actually. The segregation is more or less continuous the whole way. In the other direction it's a little bit more patchy around, just for that short bit around Whitechapel Market. As I say, it is just that bit, and you can see that the cycle lane has already returned. You shouldn't be anxious about cycling on it, but if you are, you should check out the other video I did, which is Stratford to City of London. It's actually from the City of London direction towards Stratford, but it's titled Stratford to City of London. And that will give you a much better idea of what it's like in the opposite direction, and you'll see it's not actually too bad, but it does need to be finished, as I say. Now, the most noteworthy thing about where we are now is probably that you might notice that we've very, very quickly, the surroundings have turned from very suburban to actually, I mean, this is the city. That's the walkie-talkie building right ahead of us, and we're actually basically coming into central London. There's another skyscraper going up on the left. There's more glass skyscrapers. It's actually pretty incredible how quickly the surroundings turn, I think. As if to confirm that, on our right is Aldgate East station, which is the station for Brick Lane. So we are technically, I think, still in Tower Hamlets, but we're very, very clearly quickly approaching the centre of the city. Now, this bit here is the shonkiest bit of the route. If you don't like what happens here, you could dismount and cross as a pedestrian, but what I'm going to do is actually right turn. So sometimes when the traffic's busy, people can be a bit funny about turning right. They can find it quite scary. So as I say, you can always just dismount. This is actually quite annoying, to be honest, this guy loading people on the double yellow lines. But yeah, as I say, that's one thing you should always remember if you're new to cycling. You can always get off your bike and just wheel it and cross as a pedestrian. So no matter what happens, it's annoying, and really actually we should design the city so that's not the case. But it's in there. It's there in your arsenal. Nice to see people skating here, by the way. I really like this cycle path. It's a good little, it's a neat little trick. So we're using this toucan crossing here, crossing Aldgate High Street, the road we were on, and we go straight down Jewry Street. And yeah, this is it's not a protected lane, but it's kind of quite neat, quite neatly done. And yeah, it's very rare to see traffic around here. We're sort of going towards Fenchurch Street, and we're on a street with an interesting name. It's called Crutched Friars. And if you ever wonder why that is, it's because there used to be a religious order of monks called the Crutched Friars, in the same reign as there was like the Black Friars or the Grey Friars. These guys were known as the Crutched Friars, and that was because they used to carry a staff with a cross on it. The more you know. And you can see the Tower of London just ahead of us, so that's how central we now are. And we're on Trinity Square, which could be a lot nicer. It's basically a car park. Bit of a shame. But yeah, we're going to now join Cycleway 3, and we do that by turning right at the end of this road. Just to note, when I made this video and now, this is the best way to get from Cycleway 2 to Cycleway 3. But TfL are finally building a link between Cycleway 2 and Cycleway 3 down Mansell Street, and hopefully within the next few months it should be done. And I'll do another video showing off that link when it happens, because it's really, really good. So you won't actually have to do any of that right turn, left turn, Jewry Street stuff. You'll just be able to turn left off Cycleway 2 down Mansell Street, and it'll put you on Cycleway 3, which we're on now, just a little bit before Tower Hill, and that's going to be really, really good. But for now, this is probably the neatest way to do it, for another couple of months at least, I think, because there's some quite heavy excavation going on. They meant to build that link, about a year ago, but apparently they had some problems with utilities. So we are going to turn right here, and you can see that sign there. It's a blue sign that says buses and bikes only between certain hours, Monday to Friday, 7 AM to 7 PM. So basically the time when there's any traffic, and that makes this a really useful cut through up onto London Bridge. Now this looks a bit trickier than it actually is. So we're cycling in the bus lane here, and unfortunately there's a tour bus stuck at the stop, so it looks a little bit, you have to overtake it. It looks a little bit worse than it actually is. It's usually fine, but it puts us onto London Bridge, which has a nice sort of light segregated lane. One thing I don't understand about this lane, although it's very good, couldn't they have just doubled the number of ones they had? It would have felt a lot more protected, I think. But generally it's fine. It's generally a very good lane. What does need to be sorted out is that junction that we were on, and also the junction that we're about to go to at the other end of the bridge. But I would also point out that if you're doing this route in reverse, then it can be quite difficult to turn into Fish Street Hill, and there's not really a good solution to it that I'm aware of, except to really get off your bike and just cross as a pedestrian. So if you're coming from here and then you want to go down onto Cycleway 3, not so good. Also, although this Tooley Street has a light segregated lane on the right hand side, there's not one on this side. It would be great to see one, but we're here now. So we're here, London Bridge Station, we've done it. I think that's a pretty neat route. As I say, it's going to get better when the Mansell Street link's finished. It'll be a little bit less chunky, but it's nice to show you what you can currently do. I think Cycleway 2, particularly, which we're on for most of the way, is really good. It definitely needs to be finished around Whitechapel Market though. And it's also great to see that LTN right at the beginning, which I think is fantastic, and I'm great to see that that's permanent. Thanks very much for watching that, guys. I'm going to put a map of the route in the description, as I always do. There's a link there, I forgot to mention it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Please do like, and also leave a comment, any requests or any comments you've got about the video. Love to hear them. See you again next time, and goodbye.